Hi, my name is Shivangi, and I'm a social worker by training. And I've struggled with binge eating disorder and just body image concerns um, for as long as I can remember. I think as long as I've become a teenager. Yeah, and that's why I'm here to talk about it today.
Thank you. So I'm just going to, so when did you first learn about, eating disorders or disordered eating? Do you recall the first time you learned about any of these terms?
I think I vaguely remember it being mentioned in either movies or some online forums. I think anorexia was something that was very commonly heard, and so I remember vaguely hearing it, but not really understanding it. I think the first time that I actually heard about like binge eating disorder or what it is was when I think starting of this year, I think 7, 8 months back, I was sitting one day and I had, essentially binged or had a large amount of food. And I wanted to order some more food in, and I'm sitting there thinking, why am I doing this? Like, what's wrong with my head that I have to, eat so much when I know I'm physically feeling uncomfortable? And I went ahead and I was like, maybe I need to Google this or like ask, the internet what this is. And I just like, I think I Googled why can't I stop eating, something like that. And I just had like a plethora of answers. And um, initially it was just like different things that were being said, but ultimately when I did, like when it came down to it, I read about like other people's experience with it. I just could like I felt like that sort of opened like a plethora of like just this inroad into reading other people's experiences, and that's when I actually learned about binge eating and what it is, how it works, the mysterious way it works, and what happens with it. So I think that's the first time I like logically acknowledged or just like understood it on a deeper level, or like understood what it really is that day.
Yeah, thank you. So what today makes you want to share your experiences, with your eating disorder or disordered eating? Like, what are your motivations behind, choosing to share your experience today?
I think I've always been an advocate for um, sharing openly or like just being vulnerable, and that building relationships or building just open spaces where people can feel seen, can feel heard. And I believe that there's a lot of strength in being open about things and being talking in like just talking about your own experience. And I feel like maybe in a way I do want other people to like hear it and feel more comfortable or just relate to my experience. But on a personal level for myself, I feel like it gives me a sense of um, just just empowerment. It makes me feel like I have like this strength to be able to be vocal about my own experience. So I think that's why I want to talk about it today.
Yeah, it does take a lot of strength to open up about this, and it does help. Like, you never realize how many people it helps until you start talking about it. So that's great. How has your relationship been with body image?
I think it's been it's been such a really bad relationship. I think I was 12 or 13, and I was slightly larger, or as you could say, I was fat when I was younger. Still am, but yes, I was a little larger, and I think everybody was like used to keep telling me that I had gained weight, and it was all around. It was my family, especially like my relatives, and it was like the first thing they noticed. It's like easy to visually grasp weight gain, and since I was like a teen, it really like hurt me. And so I remember I had this diary, and I used to like write, and I remember reading it like a few months back or like a year back or so, and at no end I have just written about how I like this feeling of feeling fat and feeling like nobody, like the only way someone would love me was if I, lost weight or if I became a particular size. And yeah, so it's been really it's been a turbulent relationship, and that's been so since I was a young child. And yeah, it just got progressively worse. So over time, I lost a lot of weight, and I gained a lot of weight, and then I lost it, and then I gained it, and I was just like, just doing this yo-yo cycle of like weird like diets, and trying to do all sorts of things, like starving for days and then eating a lot for a few days. But so just like these insane pendulums of with the relationship with food. And yeah, I think that affected, I think both compliments about when I had lost weight and comments about when I had like gained weight were hurtful. And I mean, they were not helpful at all, because they made me still tie my worth to how I look and how much weight I gain or lose. Um, and over time, I think it's still it's marginally better than when it was at rock bottom right now, but it, like, I still feel like this disconnect from my body, which I mean, I feel like I still feel like this desire somewhere in my like self, that okay, I have to like lose weight and reach this perfect idea of body. And yeah, so I think it's been very, very turbulent. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've already listed some factors that have influenced your relationship, but do you think, are there any other factors that you want to mention that have influenced your relationship with your body, like social media, friends, family, anything else that comes to mind?
I think definitely one of the factors was being told at a young age, and even now, like comments about my weight, and just so that was one big factor. And sometimes by like random people, like people walking on the road, like walking up to me and saying, how much is your weight? I will give you advice as to how you should lose weight. And just like these random incidents, and also like family members, because they, or like friends, because that they also have such a big influence in your life. The other thing I think, which I didn't really give much importance to, but also definitely social media, like just having to look at only like one type of body being acceptable and cherished and celebrated, definitely made me feel like no other exist or don't deserve to in some way. So that affected my relationship with my own body. I think definitely the sort of person I am. I don't know. I mean, I'm not assigning them to myself, but I also know that I can be easily, like, I'm a little sensitive, and I can hear things, and I have this like all or nothing thinking, like every like somewhat like a want to be like a perfectionist, and that is something that like sort of drags me down sometimes. Yeah, so I think that affects my relationship with my body.
Social media definitely always plays a big role in everything. If you were to try to explain your eating disorder to somebody who doesn't know anything about eating disorders, what would you, say to, what would you use to like explain to them?
I think I would tell them that, like, it's like the eating disorder or like binge eating disorder is not about someone eating like like it is about someone eating a large quantity of food, but then like the layer below it is definitely coming from, at least it came from me, from a deep sense of uh, dissatisfaction with the way I look. Like, I know it seems like counterintuitive that I would eat a large amount of food, but I didn't. But I also wanted to like lose a lot of weight. But how it worked was that there was, like there were periods of restriction. So when I was around 15, 16, I almost stopped eating as much as, a growing adult, like growing teenager needs. I stopped eating much. I started exercising a lot and I lost a lot of weight. And following that period of restriction, after that, there was just, after that, it felt like I wanted to eat everything in the world. So, like, it's that. And then after I would eat a lot of food, then there's this period of guilt and feeling like I've done something really bad, or that I've not done, like, just shame and guilt attached to eating a lot of food. And then going back to that period of restriction where I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna eat. So even like when I grew up and like this cycle of binge eating actually set in on a daily basis, it was basically every morning I would get up and tell myself that I want to lose weight. I am going to lose weight. Not going to eat anything. And that would last till the evening. So I would tremendously like never have breakfast, rarely have lunch. Till the evening, I would like stay on like water or like some very little food. And then by the evening, I would be emotionally tired, exhausted. My work was also tiring and emotionally draining. And once I reached that evening, then it was like there was no tomorrow. It was like, okay, let's just eat a lot of food. And then after that binge would have occurred, the next, like, then I would tell myself, like, the next day, I'm just not going to eat anything. So, like, the period of restriction, like these weird food rules and just these restrictive food rules and like not having, like for example, just like not having sugar for days and then suddenly like having like this period of time where you're just eating a lot of sugar. I am eating a lot of sugar. Or like sweet things. So I think these restrictions fuel the binges, and then the binges cause guilt, and then the guilt fuels the restriction. So it's like this vicious cycle where you're often trapped, and I didn't know that it was a cycle. It took me a long time to realize what was happening. I think I was too young. Nobody could recognize that it was a problem. Everybody like just saw that I gained weight, especially during like the pandemic. In a matter of like 6 months, I like shot up like a lot, like gained a lot of weight, and I was under a lot of stress. But everybody just kept giving me advice about how to lose weight. Like nobody could see that I was significantly distressed about it, or I was significantly having trouble with my relationship with my food. And I used to keep telling everyone that, I struggle with food, but nobody, not even my therapist could understand that all of the other things that were happening at that time were, like food was at the center. And yeah. So I think I think one of the things is that with an eating disorder that you're preoccupied with food, like it's at the center. That's good, bad, great, but you're constantly thinking about food, weight, how you're looking, how many grams you've gained, how many grams you've lost. So yeah.
That does help understand for sure. What according to you caused, or what was a part of the reason as to why your eating disorder happened? Like, what do you think may have contributed to developing it?
In general, I mean, I don't know in general what causes it, but I think I struggled with this question. I remember like one of the people, like one of my close friends, they asked me, actually, no, my father asked me. My father asked me as to like, there are a lot of people that go through this, like where, their families are making comments about their weight and, why did you develop an eating disorder? Like, why did you develop, like, why was this such a big thing for you? So I've struggled with that question as to why me and what, like, what did I do wrong, or like, why? I think it, Like for me, it was definitely a lot of body shaming that contributed to it. Um, and just being a teenager that was overweight, that was I felt like that was disastrous. Because that like, you know, if I had gotten like slight gain weight like in my early 20s or late 20s, I would have been able to like cope with it better than when I was a younger person. um yeah, I think those are the things that did contribute. um I think for me also, having like stressful situations around me, like I won't go into too many details, but like my work was also very difficult and emotionally challenging. um Before like for the last 2 years it was very challenging. And just like different life stressors just like pushed the eating disorder more and more, like because it didn't give me the opportunity to stop and recognize what is happening with myself. I just went on and on because I didn't have like that pause in my life. So I think those are the reasons that, you know, it got aggravated.
Did you ever have a moment of realization about, the fact that you have an eating disorder? Do you recall, like, what may have happened at that time?
Yeah, so when I mean, I mentioned that, you know, I one night I sat up Googling about what, um, you know, why I eat so much, and, you know, is this something that happens? And so I ended up reading this book, which is basically like this cognitive behavioral therapy guided self-help book. It's like a very well-known book that is used for both bulimia and binge eating. It's like a self-help resource. And like the first part of the book is just a description of what like binge eating or bulimia is. Um, and I like when I read that, and I read that in that on that same night, because I once I started reading it, I realized that, you know, the author, like he was articulating things that I had only felt in the last like 4 years or 5 years. Um, and like that I could not say, that I could not comprehend, that I could not understand. And so and that is, so nobody has really diagnosed me. Like this is all from like reading and like talking to other people as well. Um, and like watching a lot of like videos. But um yeah, so when I was reading that is when I realized, you know, it was like this double-edged sword, because I was like, okay, I realized that this is what is happening with me. I was like, it sort of validated my experience, and it made me feel like, okay, you know, Shivangi, you're not alone. There are other people who go through this. This is something that is, well, you know, I mean, it's something that people are, you know, going through, that are struggling with. And but on the other hand, it made me also very scared, because I was like, oh my god, this is like an eating disorder. Like it's a disorder, it's a mental health issue. And I really like, so that I was like, I was trying to grapple with it. I was like, and I also felt like this lack of resources or support that I could reach out to specifically for eating disorders in India. And that made me even less hopeful, because I was like, if I have to do this on my own, this is going to be really hard. Like, I don't understand. So while it was validating, like knowing or understanding that this is my eating disorder, this is what I'm going through right now, having a name for it was empowering in that sense. But it was also scary to know that, to feel like that you don't have help, or you don't have a space to like ask for help. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how easy or difficult was it for you to accept that, when you came to this realization? Was it, easy, difficult? What was it like?
I think it was easy. I think it was easy, and I feel like I mean, I recognize I'm a very resourceful person. So like my answer to it was just like find as much like self-help material that I could and use them to my advantage. Like, so I feel like I sort of became like a fixer at that point. it was easy for me to grapple with it because because it made me feel like, okay, that this is a problem, that you now know what it is, and which is like the first step towards trying to work with it. So yeah, it took some time, and I wouldn't say like the first day I realized it. I think for the first few weeks there was like significant amount of distress surrounding this recognition, but then like eventually I turned into like problem solving mode. I had like support of my therapist, who I then told that this is what I think it is, and she actually like helped me to work through that book, like the CBT guided self-help book, and like work through the steps of trying to steps towards recovery, so to say. And I think that book was really, really helpful because I got to and it has very like small steps. Like it didn't ask you to do big things. Like they're very small steps to try and work within. And I think that was one of the starting points as to where I felt like I could then change things. So yeah.
Yeah, and in addition to this, do you have any other, ways in which you cope with your eating disorder, or what else may have helped you in your journey towards recovery, in addition to whatever you've already mentioned?
So yeah, I think the book was very helpful. The book that I mentioned. So there was like there were these like online anonymous support groups, like where you could chat. It was regulated, like it was moderated by a professional. I think they were very helpful because they helped me sort of get resources again, because they used to like give recommendations, like used to just like share how you're feeling, if any resources for help, etc. So I think that was helpful. And like they had support groups for different people, like if you're anorexic, or if you have bulimia, or if you have ARFID or any other eating disorder, you can join different groups. So that was good. I think I used a lot of like podcasts. I feel like a lot of like multimedia resources. I think they were really helpful because it was just like this new world I was getting introduced to. I also like started following like the whole body positivity movement on Instagram, which was really, really helpful because it was like, oh, there's a new world. Like this is like, it just gave me a lot of affirmation. Yeah, I also was very open about it with my therapist, which was helpful. She's very supportive. She's very helpful in the way she could be. And I had like a few friends that I could speak to. And that was really helpful. Like after some time, when I got like the courage to tell my friends, um, they were very. Most of them didn't really understand where I was coming from, but they were very empathetic and supportive. So that support was helpful. For my family, I think like the only person I've spoken to about it for my family is my dad, and I hope like one day I can talk to like the rest of my family about it, openly. But yeah, I think like that's the whole um, net of support that I had. I think like one other thing that really helped me was writing. I feel like that was my thing, that I could write and I could just like talk about it. Sometimes like online, sometimes just for myself, and that in its own way was helpful to like detangle the thoughts I was having.
And how do you think, what do you think loved ones can do to help support someone with an eating disorder?
I mean, I think one is like, before like anybody develops an eating disorder, I feel like if we didn't ascribe so much weight, if we didn't ascribe so much importance to what our weight was, and keep that as the center of our worth, maybe then it would be easier for people to like talk about it. Like I was afraid of like going back home when I'd gained weight, or like meeting my best friend when I'd gained weight, because I was like that act, like gaining weight actually stopped me from social interaction, like stopped me from going out. And I feel like if people were less, you know, judgmental about how you looked, and maybe it would be easier for me to like tell you that this is what I struggle with. I mean, or maybe I wouldn't have even like started feeling this way in the first place. So that's one. But I think like after that, I feel like if you have developed an eating disorder and your eating habits are troubling, I feel like with binge eating, it's really hard to see any signs, because essentially, like a lot of binge eating, it happens in when you're alone, because there's a lot of shame and guilt attached to eating that amount of food. So it's really hard to like figure out what's happening. But if someone does open up to you about it, I feel like loved ones can be more empathetic and listen to it, instead of like disregarding it and saying that no, you're just lazy, or you're lazy for like not exercising, you're being lazy for or you don't have enough willpower, which is why you're not losing weight, or commenting on those sorts of things. I feel like that is not helpful. But just being empathetic, like just giving a listening ear. Like, I mean, especially my dad, I actually didn't expect him to be very like understanding about it, because I felt like he wouldn't understand. But he actually surprised me. He actually like he actually like listened to me like talk for like 2 hours at a stretch. And I think that was really helpful, because I felt like I could finally talk to someone in my family. I think it was really hard for me to um, talk to my family about it, or like talk to my dad especially. And I took like days before trying to open up. So I feel like when people are trying to tell you something, they've thought about it, they've considered all the pros and cons and how they're going to feel. They're already afraid. And if you can just be comforting, listen to them and tell them that you love them in spite of how they look, I mean, that's the best support you can give to them.
Yeah. And what strengths have you built through this, your journey this entire time?
I think definitely like consistency, like not, I mean, not consistency. Let me think. Hmm. Yeah, I struggle with this. I find it hard to find my own strengths. Um, I think it has made me more self-aware. I think it has made me realize that I really need to take care of myself before I can support other people or do any other like sort of work. It's made me realize that I come first. Like I think another thing that I've learned over this period is like self-compassion, and like I just like started practicing or realizing what it really means to be compassionate to yourself, like you would be to like a good friend. And that has been very helpful, because I think I have a very strong like had a very strong inner critic, especially like not just with appearance or how I'm looking, but also just in general as to how I'm performing, how I'm um, how I'm doing academically or professionally. And I've learned to like be more kind to myself. And I think I think for me, that's a big achievement, because I've always been like this, like trying to do better and like enthusiastic. And if that doesn't work out, I'll be disappointed in myself. Um, but now I've like opened my arms to like saying that we're all human, we're all going to make mistakes, we're all going to get caught, and that's okay. And we just have to be like kind to ourselves.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. What are some things that you wish to change about the way people think or talk about about food, or about their own bodies, other people's bodies, and just in general?
I feel like there's no need to tell other people what to eat, what to wear, how much weight they've gained. It's like people assume that till I tell this person that they've gained weight, they will not know that they've gained weight. Like they're just like they're in such denial that they like. I mean, people are self-aware. People know when they've gained a kilo, 2 kilos, 10, 15, 20. You don't need to tell them. There's nothing of value you're adding when someone has gained weight, when someone has lost weight, what they're wearing. Like there's just there's enough to like deal with in the world than to deal with another person telling you that they feel like you don't look good enough. So and I feel like we do that to ourselves as well. Like we berate ourselves for gaining weight or like just anything appearance. And I think there has to be like more space for kindness, and not like hating yourself or your body in that way. And I think it can be only built. I don't think it's an individual thing that I can build on my own, right? Like to a certain degree, I feel like we have this collective responsibility to create spaces where people feel accepted, like where all bodies, like thin, fat, like whatever color, how much hair they have. I think everything feels accepted in ways that is loving and kind, and only and that can enable people to individually love themselves. So I feel like we collectively have to come together to realize that doing this is not like shaming people for their body or their weight is not helpful. Like when people talk about health, and a lot of people keep telling me that like when my dad used to comment on my weight, he used to say that, oh, I'm saying this for your health. And I mean, literally the point is that body shaming or like constantly telling someone that their weight is high is not going to be helpful, because yeah, I mean, at least I am case in point. I've been told every other day in my life that I need to lose weight, and here I am, not lost much weight. So by telling people they're not going to lose it, plus to recognize that losing weight is not like a linear equation, right? Like it's not like you do this, you do that, and you lose weight. It's like a complex set of factors. Because if it was so easy, everybody would be losing it. Like clearly, like there's data that says that almost 90% of people who try diets cannot sustain long-term weight loss. So why are we like just blaming individuals for not being able to lose weight when it's a collective problem? So just like recognizing these things and like even if you don't know the science or like the evidence behind it, I think kindness and empathy can still be there in your response to people's appearance and your own. So I hope we can do that.
And in addition to that, do you have anything else that you would like to add that you think, needs to be changed if we want to start a different relationship with our body, collectively or even individually?
I think for ourselves, I feel like what has helped me has been, like both self-compassion and like mindfulness. So mindfulness and self-compassion are very interlinked. So just being aware of how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, like the thoughts I'm having, not like wishing them away or avoiding them, but just being like a gentle observer has helped me to like work with these thoughts. These thoughts that I need to lose weight, I have to lose weight, and irrespective of how I'm mentally doing. So we have to all recognize that health is both physical and mental, and they have to go together. Like you can't be like, in perfect physical shape and in terrible mental health and say that you're fully healthy, or even vice versa. So I think just like looking at it as two factors that go together, like mental and physical health going together.
Yeah. And lastly, what are your thoughts on eating disorders being a largely Western concept? What do you think about this in the Indian context?
I don't have a good answer for that. Like I don't really know if it exists I mean, if it is a largely Western concept, but what I can say from experience and what I can see from observing myself and other people around me is that, I mean, we Indians are really obsessed with other people's appearance. We do not refrain or like stop from commenting on their bodies. And yeah, I feel like that is a great enough reason to be talking about like body image, body dissatisfaction, or eating disorders. And I feel like there are a lot of young people who are feeling this way. And I feel like in the era of globalization where like these Western ideals of beauty and like size zero etc has come in, like the whole Kareena Kapoor size zero trend in India as well, right? Like there was this phase where beauty wanted to be like really super thin, and I think they still do. And all these different apps, and if you like this whole diet culture that has come in, is really harmful. And if even if, say for example, we are not as maybe we don't have those many people with eating disorders in India, but we're definitely on our way there with the way our environments are changing and evolving. And I feel like also in India, even if it was a problem, people would not report it, people would not talk about it. It's such a huge stigma. It's only when you've been supported through it, only when you have an acknowledgement of the fact that you had an eating disorder, and you've been supported through it, and that you feel like you can talk about it in public or like in open, is when people will even reach out to a professional. And on the other hand, we don't have enough professionals perhaps who may be specializing in specifically eating disorders. So diagnosing them would also be, like, the prevalence would be lesser, like the reporting would be lesser. So like given that we have such a big stigma of mental health, eating disorders is something that is, like right now I feel like depression, anxiety has still been normalized, at least in my social circles. But like eating disorders is something that is still unheard of, or like less talked about. So I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we know how it is in our country. But I definitely feel like we do need to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. So just before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to add that you may not have had a chance to share so far?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I wish that for our own sakes and for everybody else's, that we together form compassionate and kind spaces where we don't feel judged by the way we look, and we feel accepted, and we are recognized for the things that we are, like for ourselves, and for the things we do rather than how we look. And I wish we can have more of these spaces. Yeah.